Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the channel. I hope that you will like what you see and subscribe below for more. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a preview of our upcoming sew along, and we're going to be sewing along to Simplicity 8874. This is one of Simplicity's easy to sew patterns. It's a knit dress and it has neck variations, sleeve variations, length variations, and it also has pockets. So I'm super excited to sew up this dress. So for the preview, I'm going to show you all the fabric that I have purchased to make my dress, as well as all the notions that I purchased as well. And then I will go in more detail with the pattern. We'll open up the instructions. I'll show you the size that I'll be cutting out, and then we'll walk through the steps to make it, to make sure that there's nothing in the instructions that will trip us up when we get ready to sew. So let's go ahead and get into the preview for Simplicity 8874 now. So here's a closer look at the pattern, and again we're going to be sewing Simplicity 8874. This is an easy to sew pattern. I have purchased the pattern in the size 10 through 18. So let's go ahead and flip on the back and read a little bit more about the details. This is a misses and women's knit dress in 2 length with neck variations. They suggest fabrics and stretch knits only. So you can purchase activewear knits, double knit, jerseys, spandex blends, as well as stretch velvets. For my fabric, I will be using this rayon spandex that I picked up from my local Joann's. It is a really lightweight knit, so I think it's going to be really perfect for this dress and really nice and cool for spring and summer. So I'm excited about this fabric and this print. I just love it. For the notions, we need our matching thread as well as a 1/4 inch wide elastic. You need 1 yard of a 1/4 inch wide elastic for sizes 10 through 18. You need 1.25 yards of the 1/4 inch wide elastic for sizes 20 through 28. So now let's go ahead and go over the notions that I have purchased and the everyday sewing supplies that we will need. In addition to purchasing my fabric, I did go ahead and purchase a 1/4 inch wide elastic for this project. Now I had some clear elastic in my stash. This is totally optional, but I do recommend picking up something that you can use to stabilize your shoulder. Over time, if the shoulder is not stabilized, it will begin to stretch out your dress, and we don't want that. We want everything to remain intact as best as possible. So I am going to be stabilizing my shoulder with either some clear elastic, some stay tape, some hem tape, some twill tape, whatever you have in your stash. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy something unless you absolutely don't have anything, but you just need something that you can stabilize that shoulder stitch with so your dress don't stretch out over time. So I have some clear elastic, but I may end up using something else in my stash if I find my stay tape, because I prefer to use stay tape. I have my matching thread, I have some serger thread as well as my machine thread. I have my rotary cutter. This is what I use to cut out fabric. This rotary cutter is what I use to cut out my pattern. I always keep a ruler close by, as well as my snippers to cut off loose threads. We have our pins, we have our pattern weights. Seam ripper is always close by. Here's my seam gauge. I use this to mark up my hems to make sure I'm getting everything pressed out accurately. Marking tool that I'll be using for this project. Measuring tape, because I always remeasure my bust, waist, and hips before I start projects. I do not base everything off of my previous size that I cut, off of my previous measurements, because weight fluctuates. So I always like to remeasure really quickly before I start projects. So I always have that by. And since we are going to be sewing with knit fabric, we need to make sure that we have a jersey, a ballpoint, or a stretch needle in our machine. So now that I went over the supplies that I purchased and the everyday sewing supplies that we typically always need, make sure that you have your hot iron as well. Now I'm going to open up the envelope and we can go over the instructions to make sure there's nothing in here that's going to trip us up when we're sewing along to this pattern. Now for me, I think I'm gonna go with View C on this pattern. I like the length, I like the simple bodice and the sleeves as well. I'm not really interested in the tie sleeves, so if you are, then by all means make that, as well as any other neckline that you choose, but I think I'm gonna go with View C for my dress. So before I get into the steps, I do want you all to see that they do have some tips in here for sewing with knits. They're telling you to use a ballpoint or stretch needle, a narrow zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch to prevent the shoulder seams from stretching. Oh my gosh, I literally just said that. I'm just kidding, but it says to pin center of hem tape, clear elastic or twill tape along seam line. Y'all, I'm so serious. I did not open up these instructions to see this before I said that, I promise. But pin center of hem tape, clear elastic or twill tape along the seam line on front shoulder edges, then stitch the shoulder seam. Now, one thing I will say about that is some people like to stitch it to the back shoulder seam, because once you finish off the shoulder seam and you press it going toward the back, if you have it on the front, you'll be able to see either your hem tape or twill tape or clear elastic. So I have seen some people who prefer to sew it on the back. Honestly, it's up to you. You can put it on the front, you can put it on the back. Just make sure you put it somewhere to prevent your shoulder seam from stretching out over time. It's also giving you tips up here in case you want to sew your dress using your serger. So that's also some great tips to look at if that's something you're interested in. So now let's go ahead and start going through the steps. And I'm gonna be following along with view C since that's the view that I'm interested in making. So starting up here, it looks like we're making our darts for our front piece. Then we're sewing the center back seam on our back. These steps are for view A and B. View C and D, we pick back up over here on step 8 with sewing our shoulder seams together, sewing the neckband, attaching that, straight stitch or zigzag stitch the bodice close to the next seam, stitching the front to back at the side seams. All right, then it picks back up at step 13, working on the armhole band for view A and D up here. This right here is for sleeve B. This is for doing the tie. And I'm gonna be picking up down here with sleeve C. I'm doing the 2 rows of E-stitching, hemming the sleeve. I do wonder if setting the sleeve in using the flat sleeve method would be a good idea, since, I mean, it is knit. I may consider doing that, but I'll see once I'm sewing it. So moving on up here to putting the sleeve onto the bodice. Then we start working on the skirt pieces. This is for all views. Putting the pockets onto the skirt, creating the casing for the elastic underskirt, inserting the elastic, stitching the elastic together, closing up that seam, finishing off the hem, and we'll be all done. All right, y'all, that's all for the preview video. I hope that it was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know below. I'll be more than happy to answer. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on those notifications so that you don't miss when the Sew Along goes live. I'll see you all then. Blessings, everyone. Bye.